Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel if you've been here before. Today is the fourth video that I am doing where I'm putting on makeup kind of autumnal a little bit. This is maybe not so much, but tried for it a little bit with a specific palette. Today I'm using the Saucebox Nocturne Palette, and today's episode is American Horror Story Apocalypse. Could it be Satan? So if you'd like to see how I got this look and talk a little bit about this episode, please keep watching. All right, so we open with a voiceover from Michael of him as a teen, and he is talking about Mead, or the woman that Mead is based on, who is not Constance. And hopefully we'll get more about that in episode 6, I think, is the one that Jessica Lange is going to be on. And I think she's going to be on it as Constance, so we should get more, hopefully, information about what happened to Constance. And I do wonder if there'll be some kind of something like the Omen, where women kind of sacrifice themselves so that the right keepers can be in place. There were a couple of things that reminded me of that. Then we're back in the house and we realize that the voiceover has been done. He's been talking to Mead. I'm going with Maple with a fluffy brush. So yeah, so we realize that he's been talking to Mead, to the robot, this whole time, and he senses that there's a powerful presence in the house. Mead says everyone's dead, and he says not anymore. Then we are back in the room with the witches in the present day, and turns out that Mallory and Coco both had an identity spell on them to protect them from themselves, because if they had known what they were, then maybe they were kind of like plants or moles or something, and they didn't know what they were. Dinah did. And Mallory is apparently the strongest, Coco is the weakest, but Mallory's handling it the best. I'm gonna go in with Spell with a slightly denser brush. And Dinah doesn't want to be involved at all. And what I think is interesting is that Michael and Dinah knew each other, but Michael didn't know Coco or Mallory. So I wonder if this identity spell, certainly it was something that was put on them so that they didn't know who they were. But I wonder if that's just something about yourself, that you don't know who you are, or if at some point like other people around you don't know who you are either. I wonder if Michael has ever met Mallory and Coco and just he was maybe under a spell so that he forgot that he knew them. Then we have a commercial break, and then the next section begins with 3 years before the bomb, and we are in the Hawthorne school, the boys' school, and all the boys are together putting together a bunch of glass into a crystal ball. And then John Henry Moore calls a special meeting. They all come into the room, and the chancellor is there, Ariel is there, and they look at this video that the LAPD has sent in of this boy who is Michael Langdon in custody, and the officer in the room is being really abusive with him, and Michael ends up killing him in a very violent manner. Doesn't seem like he necessarily knows what he did. Then there's a lot of back and forth about whether he's possessed or whether he's the alpha, and the alpha is a magic that would exceed the witches. It's this legendary number that you can get to, and there's never been one. And everybody seems excited except for John Henry Moore, who's very trepidatious, and he doesn't think that it's wise to get that kind of evil into the school. I'm gonna go in with Midnight on my lid with a flat brush, and Ariel, the chancellor, then goes to the jail and talks to Michael, and it's a story about how he got there, where Mead was, actually I'm not loving this, I'm gonna put a little of this on, but then I'm gonna go in with another color. That's even. I think I'm gonna go in with Sage over my whole lid, or the bottom part of my lid, and I will use some Fix Plus. You see the scene in the butcher shop where the Mead woman is trying to buy the goat head, and Michael kills him really without meaning to. And then Ariel breaks him out, and there's a guard that Ariel magically shoves up against the wall as they're leaving. And as they're leaving, I thought what was interesting is that Michael squeezes his hand and seems to be breaking his neck. So up until that point, we've only seen him do things really without meaning to. So this is the first time that we see him intentionally hurting somebody by squeezing. I'm gonna go back in with that first domed brush just to smooth this out a little bit. And I do want something else. I'm gonna flip it over and go back in with Midnight with the same brush, flip it over and just hit the outside of my lid. Then we're outside, and Michael is getting into the car with Ariel, and this Mead woman, the woman before Mead, is down the street kind of screaming about how, you know, about the future and that she did this all for him. And that is the thing that reminded me of the scene in The Omen when the nanny, spoiler alert, hangs herself from the window at the party. Although she wasn't hanging herself, but it felt very much like The Omen. Schwing liner. Then we are back at the school. It's Ariel and Michael at Hawthorne, and Ariel is talking about when Cordelia went on her publicity tour. The neighbors didn't like the fact that there was a school for Warlock. They burnt it down, and then the school was rebuilt underground. With the object that we see is one of I think the only piece that survived the fire. It was a sculpture from the garden. And he comes in and the boys welcome him in. We have another commercial break, and it's been a month. They are apparently, he's in front of the four. He's in front of Ariel and John Henry Moore and the other two, Chablis and the fourth. And they're accelerating the testing process, that they label everybody who's there between 1 and 4, and this is a test to kind of see where he is in terms of ability and strength and all that stuff. And they normally do it after a year, but they're doing it with him after a month. And everybody in the room is a 3. They've never had a 4, so a 4 is the alpha. A 4 is the one that is stronger than the witches. And again, remembering that whole initial first scene of everybody talking about him, I don't think they've really kind of figured out what's happening with him and if he is a warlock or if he's possessed or if there's something else going on. So they start putting him through these tests. The first is scrying, and he's in a mirror, he's looking in a mirror, and they want him to find a book. And he knows what the book title is before they even tell him. And he reaches into the mirror and pulls it out. And everyone is very impressed, except for John Henry Moore, who is upset because he ignored directions. He wasn't supposed to obtain the book. He was just supposed to locate the book. The second test is him transporting himself, and that's pretty intense because the other guy, not Ariel, is throwing things at him like knives and whatever, and he's able to move around instantly. And one of the things that he does too is he's up on the ceiling, which makes me wonder, and I do hope that we get a reveal about Rubberman, but I wonder if that was him, or at least some of the time maybe was him, because that's one of the positions that we saw Leatherman in. Then the third test is him to turn water into snow. And not just water into snow, but to take the water around them in the room, the molecules of water around them in the room, and turn them into snow, which he does, but then it quickly becomes this very violent snowstorm that could have killed them. And when he comes out of it, it seems like he really did not mean to do it. He's apologizing for it. And they have him leave the room, and they say that they have a lot to discuss. And everybody there is super impressed with him, except again for John Henry Moore. He says there's a malevolence in his magic. You can't corral the darkness. We should be afraid. Then Ariel says that we should be afraid of the status quo, which is that the warlocks are beneath the witches, are not as good as the witches. And he says, let's see if he can rise and lead us to our rightful place. They want the power over the witches. And he says, this is the moment that changes everything. And then we go to commercial. And then we're back, and we're at Miss Robichaux's, and the music from Kevyn is on, and I liked it a lot. And we're in a room, Bésame translucent vanilla banana setting powder, and Zoe's teaching, and Mallory is in the room, and she's talking about Josephine Bonaparte and the fact that Josephine Bonaparte was a witch, and about Josephine's roses. And Cordelia comes in, and Mallory does this really impressive thing with the roses, where she's turned the rose blue, and then the petals come off and they become butterflies. And Zoe whispers to Cordelia that her grandmother has said that the family line goes back to Salem. And then there's an emergency council meeting that's called. So it is Cordelia and Zoe and Myrtle, and I do hope we get more detail about how and when and why Myrtle was resurrected. I'm really happy to have her back, but I don't. Last time we saw her, she was burned at the stake saying Balenciaga. So they go to Hawthorne to talk about Michael. Ariel thinks that that Michael might be the next Supreme, and he wants Cordelia to administer the 7 wonders, which she is not willing to do, she says, because of Misty Day. And I'm sure that at least a big part of it is because of that, because the last time she administered that test before the subject was ready, the results were disastrous, and that she is not going to risk this kid's life by doing that before he's ready. And then there's also a lot of talk about the fact that a warlock can't be as strong as a witch, that there's something about testosterone that blocks communication on the ethereal plane. And then there's talk about Queenie and the fact that she didn't save Queenie. And then we're in the Cortez, which was surprising. And Queenie is playing gin, or is learning to play gin with March. She's trying to get her out, and every time she leaves the hotel, Queenie doesn't come with her. And she says, I could hear the souls screaming, desperate for a way out. I realized then that the hotel wasn't merely haunted, but an entryway to all things dark and satanic, where the devil reigns. All my spells and incantations were useless in that dark realm. The light from which we draw our power was extinguished by Satan himself. Which I think is really interesting, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around the whole Antichrist and the warlocks and possession and how this is all going to be explained. But the fact that she's talking about the energy in that hotel being very dark and satanic is interesting. Queenie tells her to leave and go back to the coven because she'll never be able to get her out. She says that her failure to rescue Queenie was by far her greatest failure as Supreme, and so she's not going to do 7 wonders. Ariel says, why do you get to decide that? And she says, I'm the Supreme. I'm the bleeping Supreme. And he says, no, you're just a scared bigot. And she says, scared of what? And he says, scared of the alpha, of a man rising to the level of Supreme, of an end to ages of female dominance. I'm telling you that time has come and your time is up. And then Cordelia says, the council is closed, the decision is final, there's nothing more to be said. And in another room, Michael senses all of this. He's not within earshot, but he senses it. Got a little too excited there with my contour. Michael senses that his eyes get all like light blue, and he is drawing the Cortez. Commercial break, and then we're back at the Cortez, and it's Queenie and March playing gin, and Michael comes in, and March says, what a fascinating specimen, alive yet so intimate with the dead. And he tells Queenie, I'm here to do for you what your Supreme couldn't. And March says, take his hand, Queenie. And she says, what if I don't want to? And March says, I'm not sure you have a choice. And for as evil as March was, like, this just seems like March is conceding that, and knows somehow that he has more power. NYX Blush and Bourgeois Pig. Then he gets her out, and then we are at, looks like a Bed Bath & Beyond kind of a situation, maybe a Walmart, and Madison Montgomery is customer service. She is in her own personal hell. Hourglass veil powder. And nobody knows who she is. They all think that she's Lindsay Lohan. And she's in the towel section. They make her go to the towel section to clean up the towel section again. And Michael's there, and she knows that Michael doesn't belong there, which means that she's aware that she's in her own personal hell. And she offers him sexual favors to get her out. And then when she realizes that she doesn't have to, she wants it anyway because it's been a while. Queenie's there, and she says, you're a hoe even in the afterlife. And he says he's taking them to prove a point. And then Michael and Queenie and Madison, Charlotte Tilbury, Legendary Lashes, Volume 2. And they are arriving as Myrtle and Zoe and Cordelia are leaving. And as Myrtle and Cordelia and Zoe start leaving, the song that starts playing is Portishead, Give Me a Reason. And not sure what the lyrics mean in terms of this scene. The phrase that keeps repeating again and again is, I just want to be a woman. So that could be it, but I'm wondering about the subtext, and not sure what that is. And then Cordelia passes out when she sees, presumably when she sees Queenie and Madison alive and Michael. And I don't know if she's passing out because she's surprised or if she's passing out because he's draining her power. The thing that she said before about the Cortez, she said about the Cortez, the light from which we draw our power was extinguished by Satan himself. So I wonder if that is the reason why, or at least part of the reason why she faints. I'm going to go in with Nars Cruella. I'll speed you through this. So we're left with Cordelia having fainted. Queenie is running towards her, and then Madison annoyingly kind of seems like she's really annoyed, starts walking towards them. And then it's over. So some final thoughts. One is that this has just been a difficult week in general. It's Saturday, October 7th, and the Kavanaugh confirmation just happened, and it's been just very emotional and heavy. So the first thing I'll say, Murphy and Falchuk are really good at just catching something as it's happening. I don't know how they do it. And this just brought up a lot of feelings about men feeling like women are too powerful and trying to kind of knock them down and take away their power and undermine them and usurp whatever agency or power they have. So I hope that this does not end up being a season where like the Antichrist prevails or like the men kind of usurp the women. I'm hoping that that's not where we're headed, and I don't think it is, but that's just, I didn't think today would happen either. So that's the first thing. I'm really hoping that that's not where we're headed. And then I'm not sure how the whole Antichrist thing is supposed to work with the witches and the warlocks. I do know that the John Henry Moore character, when they were first talking about who this guy in being held in an LAPD who ended up killing the guard, they were talking about maybe he was possessed or maybe he was this powerful warlock. They weren't sure, but I'm not sure if they're ever going to figure out that he is the Antichrist. And I'm also curious about some people. So in the present, we don't have Zoe or Queenie in the present. So it's Madison, Myrtle, and Cordelia in the present, but we don't see Zoe or Queenie. So I'm wondering what happened to them and if we'll see more of them. And yeah, that is this episode. I'm looking forward to the next ones. I know that the 6th one is, I think, directed by Sarah Paulson, and that's the one where we're supposed to see Constance Langdon again. Just hope it doesn't end up being like the patriarchy prevailing. I hope it ends up being kind of a, not a nice ending, but at least kind of an equal ending and not been a weird couple weeks. So thank you so much for watching. Sorry I got off in a bit of a political tangent there for a second, but it's weighing pretty heavily on me and I can hear it in my voice as I'm talking. But I did want to film this, so thank you so much for watching. A lot to do in the world, a lot to do on YouTube, and it means a lot that you took some time to spend with me today. Take care, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye.